Hello, hello. We're going live, and I am here with Susy Martins, who is became a dear friend of mine, who has been working in the corporate global on a side of people, HR, and she was lately chief people officer with the company. She works with companies in the private equity space, tech space. I wanted to have a chat with her today and talk a little bit about layoffs. And since she's working with private equity firms, what is she seeing and where are bosses missing a mark? What are bad bosses doing? What is she seeing good bosses doing? I am so excited. Thanks for joining me. And yeah, let's dive in.
Let's do it. So nice to see your face, Anya. And it's a good topic, right? Because this year has been an uncertain year. And if you look at tech, like every week you hear something new or someone announcing out in LinkedIn, it's becoming commonplace, right? For people to say
Yeah.
that, they're moving on or something's happened at their organization. And when we talked about bad boss, I'm like, what's a good topic? We were saying like, there's not really like bad bosses, it's like, just bad moves type of thing, like
Yeah.
bad bosses.
Yes.
And we talked about a theme of like, what I'm seeing is that people are trying to be too nice or they just don't know what to do. So they say nothing. And saying nothing doesn't help, right? Like it creates so much anxiety when people are, tippy toeing around, they're seeing what's going on in the media. Then, it creates gossip, like in terms of they're talking virtually and chatting with everyone,
Yeah.
versus, where the boss has an opportunity to actually have a conversation. And maybe you can't talk about all the details and maybe you don't know all the details, but that's what you say. You can
Yeah.
actually say, you know what, I
Yeah.
hear you guys. Like it is, uncertain right now.
Uncertain. Yeah.
This is what we know. Like you just tell people what you know, keep people
Yeah.
focused on goals. Like that's what I always redirect people to do. Cause I'm like, the one
Yeah.
thing you know is like, you're still marching forward. So,
Yeah.
and that gives people, I don't know, something to focus on, right? So that they are
Yeah.
not focused on noise and like all these conspiracy
Mhm.
theories of what could be happening, right? So,
Yeah. No, I love that you're bringing that up because I think, yeah, like we're thinking, right? What are the reasons that people are quiet, that leaders are quiet? On one side, there's an HR who tells you, like, you can't say anything because they're going to sue us. They're so afraid to say the wrong thing. On another side, sometimes they really don't know and they can't say, like, but what if I tell them and then it goes the other way? But I hear again, like, those are clients. We hear them. I can't tell them that nobody's getting laid off. I can't make that promise because I don't know. So I love what you're saying. Transparency is not giving out all the details. Transparency is not sharing confidential information. Transparency is saying, here's what I know today. And transparency is saying, when I do know more, I will share more. Here's what I do know, that even if anyone is going to get laid off, I promise you, I will help you. Here's
yeah.
like, and it's like, what do I do know?
Yeah, and
Right?
and then it gets into the discussions of when you have to go through one of these adjustments. Like
Oh,
it's horrible. Like no one likes doing this. I've had to do it in my career as a leader,
yeah.
on
Letting
the
go
HR
people.
side. And it sucks. Like you'd have to be like dead inside not to feel, bad about it. But
Yeah.
then I have people calling me all the time now. Like, you know what I mean? Like on a regular, like, Susie, this is what's happening. Do you think the script is okay? And I was like, you realize you can still be human. They
Yeah.
get so afraid of what you said, like the legality of it all. And I was like, you can just say, like, you know what? Um, I loved working with you. You can say that.
Yeah.
You can say,
Yeah.
I'm here for you. You
Yeah.
can reach out to someone as a leader, like, maybe next week and say, hey, just so you know, like, I'm still here. And if you want to connect or check out my LinkedIn network, I'm here to help you kind of navigate. So,
Yeah.
and that's easy for you to do. And that's part of being a human being. And also
Yeah.
like knowing it's a big deal for someone. They can't hear anything when they're getting exited. Like it's just a
Nothing.
blur.
Yeah. Yeah. It's adrenaline, high adrenaline. And I think, yeah, you're also speaking to like almost like binary of like either we're friends or like now I go all cold, all dead on the inside. It's like, no, everybody understands. Like, how do you bring that humanity element into these conversations and saying, I know it's hard. There was a time in my life where I got laid off. It's hard for me. It's hard for you. It's hard for the company. Here's the best thing we can do right now is this. So what are you also seeing with, I mean, that conversation is hard and I love like the transparency element. What do good bosses, bad bosses do with after the layoff? Because now we're facing a situation where I say, okay, now Susie, you're staying. but I've let go another four people. So I want you to do more with less people and less resources and not freak out that maybe you are next. So I want you to like
Yeah.
perform under high pressure with no resources and no time. So how do we rebuild trust for people that stayed so that they are not freaking out operating in the under anxiety?
Yeah, I think the number one thing to remember that it matters how someone leaves an organization, right? So if you, work with respect, right, and professionally with someone who's leaving the organization, the team that's staying sees that too,
Yeah.
right? So that's number one, right? Because that kind of shows them, you know what, this sucks. No one wanted to do this, but you know what, this got handled with care, and they're going to
Yeah.
handle the future with care. And
Employer branding. Employer branding. Yeah.
and I've talked about this before about creating employee fans in general.
Yeah.
That like in the last year, and we all know this, right? Like in terms of we had everybody go home to work, then there was the Great Resignation. Nearly 1 in 2 people left, and then I have done a couple talks where I'm just like, you know what? What about like not freaking out just about like filling seats? Oh my God, they're leaving. Let's fill
Yeah.
seats. And
Yeah.
what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Like, whoa, you're not building a relationship with people leaving, and that population could come back as fractional workers. There's like 2 times the number of boomerang employees right now. I think it's like
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
13% of people go back to where they came from. So this saying goodbye is a real deal. In terms of like just giving strength to your brand, but also to the organization in terms of staffing options and people coming back, because it is a really, I think that number might go up to 25%.
I think so. They're just gonna come back as fractional, yeah, consultants. Yeah.
Yeah, or do a victory lap through, right? Like the grass is not always greener on the other side.
Yeah.
So I think that's one piece. And I think in terms of like, what do you do after with the team? Like after that, I think is that you talk to everyone, like get people together immediately and just say like, this was tough. And then, but we're moving forward together. You're here. We're here in it together and I'm with you, right? Like there's some
Yeah.
ambiguity to all of this, but we're in it together and we're going to march forward together. And I think it's like that consistent touch points, bringing people together so that they're not making up stories in their heads, right? And with everybody being virtual,
Yeah.
this is more important than ever. So especially that first 2 weeks after, like constantly talking to people
Yeah.
and really white glove, like all of your high performers, right? Because those, when
Yeah.
you have layoffs and uncertainty, then the first people to leave are all your best performers. Because
Yeah.
they're just like, you know what, maybe I want a different option. Maybe this is not for me. Maybe I saw my friend get exited and it sucked, right? Like I don't want to
Yeah.
work anymore, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's something to be on high alert as a good leader in managing your talent for sure.
Yeah, and it goes back, right, to like having those conversations. Don't make assumptions. Ask to people. Say, what do you need to feel safe? What do
Yeah.
you need to be successful? What do you need to perform? I actually witnessed a really cool thing where after layoffs, a couple of people were let go, a couple of people left themselves, and the leader actually said, "Let's have a grieving ceremony. Can we not jump into the task execution? And can we take a moment to acknowledge that some of us lost really good friends and colleagues and talent and all the fun times?" And it was so beautiful to just like, instead of like, okay, who's going to do what? Because, Susie left. Now we need to, like you said, like refill
Yeah.
the role. It's like, let's just take 30 minutes and like acknowledge that this sucks. It is sad. And like, and I'm gonna miss these people. And that's just the truth of it.
It's true. I think that that's a really great idea. I haven't heard of anyone actually doing it, but I think that that would go a really long way to sit in it, right?
Yeah.
Because you need to sit in it and talk in it. Talk
Yeah.
about it with your teams. What a great idea. Yeah.
Brene Brown talks about embrace the suck. That's her
Yeah.
phrase. Embrace the suck. It's gonna suck. And okay, so what else? What else are you seeing that you're like, wow? And maybe in your career, you're thinking back of a boss and you're like, wow, that was really good leader. And what stood out? Like what makes someone a good leader?
Yeah, I think your best leaders are ones that just build confidence, right? Because I think the best employee, if you say, what's the best employee to hire? I'd say smart and happy all day long. You can train anyone. I'm a big believer in this in development,
Yeah. Yeah.
so like, what do you need, for like someone to be then successful is to build that confidence as they're learning, meet them where they're at. That's like the whole idea of situational leadership. That's what's awesome about an awesome leader. And all of my favorite bosses have always like pushed you, but gave you confidence that you could do it. Right. So you wake up and you're like, I can do this. Right. And, the amount of spiral that gets created when you're
Yeah.
uncertain is so damaging. Right. So, yeah.
It's so hard because that's what I'm seeing, right? There's so much uncertainty, anxiety, high adrenaline. And we know you can only function for so long in high anxiety. And
Yeah.
then creativity goes down, innovation goes down. I think like it's like a bull in a china shop. And I had the experience. The more I'm like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. I can't break anything. The more you become like clumsy and you actually fall on your face. It's like the same thing. I can only function for so long. So I think situational leadership, yeah, is like having those one-on-ones and instead of like these blanket statements, right? Equality is like, okay, everybody needs reassurance. No, actually, not everybody. Some people need something else. So it's like the bringing
Yeah.
the equity lens and having those one-on-ones and saying, I know it's hard. What do you need from me?
Yeah, and it depends on what you're doing. So it's not necessarily like, okay, for Anya, I just let her do her own thing because she's smart and capable. But there might be something new you're trying. So then you know what? We should spend more time because I
Yeah.
can't assume that you're going to feel good about it. You know what I mean? Because you have high expectations of yourself. You want to do awesome. And it's usually the high performers, right? That suffer this of like
That burnout.
constant
Yeah.
delegation, right? And
Yeah.
then maybe other people don't grow because they're constantly micromanaged, right? So
Yeah.
you really have to catch yourself as a leader to look at it situationally. I'm at that person and then just pump their tires and get them like to test and try new things out all day long. So you these are them speaking in front of different people. So yeah, I think that's what and people need this more than ever, especially the young. What I'm also seeing in the market right now a lot is that the young workforce coming in because they are a group of people that were at home during high school during COVID, right? Which is not normal,
Hmm.
right? University, which is
Yeah.
also not normal, right? And then they jump into work. Well, and now they're working virtually with someone who's been with the company for 5 days, right? So now we have this
Yeah.
scenario where someone doesn't know how to interact or doesn't know how to interact in this scenario, right? And there's so many expectations. And during COVID, I think everybody was so careful when we went home, right? And said, okay, like we have to do all these things. Oh my gosh, this is such a big change. And now it's deemed normal. It's not normal. And like a lot of there hasn't been
Mhm.
good process put in place or communications or that really heavy management training. Like there's still so much more to do, especially as the companies experience a lot of turnover at the same time. And then a lot of young talent that has had zero structure coming in, they get some onboarding, but then after that, like it takes work, right? To actually
Yeah.
build a good routine and a machine, right? For any organization to
Yeah.
work remotely. It has to be very deliberate, right? Written down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those competencies, right? It's like they don't have the
Mhm.
competence. Nobody has the competence, and nobody we've never experienced anything like this, right? So
True.
I love that situation. So something that I come across a lot, and I'm just curious about your opinion. I'm gonna take advantage of our friendship.
Yeah.
People, managers not addressing lack of performance. Like going back to almost like that niceness. And you just said something that created an idea in my head where you said, it's like usually it's not the bad people that leave, it's actually good high performers that quit when you don't address because they're so tired of picking up the slack after everyone. So, what have you seen when it comes to being afraid, avoiding, keeping people accountable, hoping things will go away, hoping things will change? What advice do you have for those leaders? And what is the cost of not addressing like lack of performance?
Yeah, 100%. This is a good question. I think there's a huge cost, right? Like if you look at the stats, I think it's something like 70% of people when they leave an organization say they're leaving a manager, right? But the reality is a lot of that is what the manager has done, right? Not necessarily that they don't like, whoever their direct manager is. It
Yeah.
might be like how they made decisions. So the whole idea of a non-performer. So for example, last week I was on a call and we were doing an engagement survey questions and we put the question in there like, is everybody held accountable equally? Right? Because this,
Oh,
this is
first, everyone,
yeah,
everyone,
it's
and
an exit. It's
equally.
a run for the exit, right? Like if you feel like you and I are working next to each other, you're working all day and creating these wonderful products. We're the exact same level. We have the same mandate. And then I am like going for 4-hour lunches and I'm annoying and I don't live our values, but I'm getting paid the same as you. We both got a bonus. You're like, what the
How
heck?
long am I going to last? Yeah.
It's personally offensive, right? Like, and it's
Yeah.
it's destructive because you feel like it's not fair. I don't feel like
Yeah.
things are being done fairly. Meanwhile, your boss is just thinking, oh, they might not have the whole picture, right? Is one thing because things are remote and they don't see
Yeah.
everything that someone does all day long. But also they think they're being nice and giving people chances. And there's two problems with that. One, the scenario of the unfairness between us. And then two, in the manager's head too, it sucks up space in your mind. You're like, oh, Susie, like I've given her these chances. She's a nice person. Maybe she's going to
I
do
feel
better.
bad.
And then the peers of the manager, like, you should get rid of her. She's dropped the ball on these five things, right? And you're like, oh yeah, you're right. I should get rid of her. And this just sucks up so much of your brain. Like,
But I don't have capacity right now. The demand is too high, even though she's not
yeah,
performing, but she's doing something. Who am I going to replace her with? Yeah, the
it's tough.
constant.
It seems basic if you think like, oh yeah, that makes sense. They should just exit that person or whatever. It's ruining like the peer relationships. But then you become a person. The managers are people too, right? And they're just
Yeah,
like, well, and you're right. They feel all the pressures from the business side, and they suffer thinking about losing a person that is a person there. But then on the other side, if they just exit them, it'd be so much easier to move forward because of
yeah,
how many negative impacts. So anyway, so there's this dance. I've seen this so many times, and I
I know,
think
me too.
especially with young leaders, it's even harder, right? Because maybe they're friends and or they've never done it before and they don't know what to do. And I always think people will be happier if they leave because if I'm not performing in my job, like I feel that, right? So
And that's the thing. Everybody knows. Like the low performer also knows they're not pulling their weight. It's not like they're like totally oblivious. They
yeah,
know.
bad.
And I think often when well we get called in when things are really going like bad or people really like struggle with performance, and we I always say like, listen, bullying, harassment, all this like horrible things don't happen all of a sudden.
I agree.
They happen because people were allowed to behave in a certain way for a period of time. It's like domestic abuse. First, it was a joke and you took it. Then I pushed you and you took it. And then I choked you. Like it's a progression, right? Same with work. It's like first, well, nobody's keeping them accountable. I show up for lunches. I do this. I know I'm not working. You know, everybody knows. But it's
Mhm.
so sad that it's always the high performers who are like, I'm out. Like the injustice of it, the unfairness of it. And that is not just now you lost a good person, but going back to that employer branding.
Mhm.
It's not that I'm gonna quit. I'll be like, I'll tell all my friends not to go anywhere near
100%.
you.
Yeah. It's so the important piece here is as leaders and as HR is that you need to figure out how do you keep a beat, like understand it, an ear to the ground now, like what is really going on.
Yeah.
How much of that is engagement surveys? How much is that talking to people, like actually talking,
Yeah.
like have a phone call.
Yeah,
What's
and
up?
what's going on? Because so often, like, it's actually we look for signs of is it mental health? Like, also, like, what is happening if Susie was performing, all of a sudden she's slacking? What is happening in her life? What is
100%.
causing it? Like, there's something, there's always a cause, right? So there's also that element of like keeping an eye. I know it's a lot of juggling, many, many balls.
And it all comes down to fundamentals, right? Like ultimately you go to work, you have a mandate, and we're all in a team together. It's a community of people who work, right?
Yeah.
And that, like, if you just go back to fundamentals of getting to know people, working together, understanding what we're supposed to be doing, which takes work, right? Like all these things take time. I always get asked, like, what's the number one thing to drive engagement? And you get your scores up. I'm like, you have to spend time with people, get them aligned, get to
And
know
nobody
them.
has that time because it's like, well, we're busy getting shit done.
Yeah, but you make the
I
time,
don't have
like,
time.
and you have to make that time. That is time that is critical, right? Like, think of all the great teams you've ever been on. It's the boss or the team that spent time with you. Rallied through something. You stayed in touch with them, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's relationship building.
I'm gonna make a full circle, kind of like go
Yeah,
back to where we started because we're almost at 20 minutes, and to say that yeah, where we started, where you said, well, even if you quit, the way people, I always say, it's not what you say, it's how you do it. I'm gonna give an advice suggestion is like when people leave, you said something like grass is not always greener. Give them permission to come back. Going back to humanity and say, hey, I you want to go and try something else. Hey, let me make an introduction. I'll connect you. I'll create opportunities for you. I'll give you good recommendations. And if at some point you want to come back, you can always come back. I think it's so powerful
oh
to
yeah.
have, like you said, those doors open that if at any point you're like, you know what? I regret leaving. Like that was a good team. That was a good boss. I'm going to be here. Come back. Like no hurt feelings.
100%. I think all of the time during the pandemic, people put time into onboarding and recruitment, and you can get management teams, executive teams behind like the cost of hiring is so expensive, right? Like, and get them in here and paying so much for like all these critical skill
Yeah.
sets. Now, I think there really needs to be a shift to the investment on the exit. And it's
Exit
not an
strategy.
exit, it's like a relationship like builder, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's like, how do you maintain an alumni network? Right. That's what this really is. Right. And stay connected with them. And, like for me, I'm so proud of every company I've worked with. If you ask me anything about any of them, I'd be like, that was awesome. And I stay
I
in touch
know
with
you had a hard time because my question was like, I'm like, come on, Susie, give me something like the bad boss. And she's like, I I don't know. Like, I don't really like, I don't know. So I agree with you. Alumni network also, good companies, high performing companies I'm seeing, they're always leaving good terms, but also say, hey, who do you know in your circle? I'm going to give you a referral fee. Refer your friends, because my assumption is if I love working with you, I bet there are people in your circle who are just as amazing.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. And this is like where all the best like employees come or through referral. Like this has been
Alumni,
studied.
alumni
No, alumni
network.
is the best. And you can even figure out the problems faster because you already know what's up, right? Like if I went back to, I don't know, like wherever, like Apply Board, I already know like how they work, what they do, the students, I already know their vibe. I slide back in so much easier than an external consultant, right?
Oh
I
my
could come
God.
into a 4 month
Yes.
project and happily be so excited to drive it forward, right? With the
Yeah.
team of people I used to work with. Like how fun is that? So
It's
yeah,
like, I'll go back. Yeah, it's like Simon Sinek, right? I love this guy. And he
yeah,
always
I
talks
do so.
about like, just care about your people. Like, if you really deeply care about your people, it's like your kids. Like, I love my kids, but I'm also always setting them up for success to go out and do fun things in the world. I'm not doing it for them. As a good parent, I'm preparing them to do amazing things on their own. And if you don't care about people, I always say, if you don't care about people, please don't go into a leadership role, because leadership management is all about people problems. And you're like, I hate people problems. I hate people. Find an individual contributor role. You'll be so much more successful. Please do not go into management role. Like, it
You know,
requires deep care.
my favorite kind of thought in this space is that of Jack Welch, because I worked at GE, of the generosity gene. That's what he
Yeah.
used to talk
Oh,
about, right? That leaders need to have the generosity gene. I think you
yeah.
need this as a person, but like honestly, you're right. If you don't have the generosity gene, then you're not going to be a great leader because you have
Mm-mm.
to love seeing someone succeed. And even like, the joy, like GE, they invested, I think, $1 billion when I was there a million years ago annually in L&D, right? Because they believed it
I'm in
wasn't
the
only
wrong company.
it was awesome, right? Like, and they basically like their whole culture was of leadership development. That's what it was all about. And my joy, and my manager's joy was in seeing the next person down, develop and move. And they kept people forever. Like their retention was insane. And they took bets on people. They would put someone like me who had no finance background into finance. And then I started auditing. And it's all about building confidence in you, giving you the tools. You take that smart, happy person that's willing to do the work and you just drive it. Right. So yeah, it takes time though, right? You have to want to do this and it has to be the culture. And I encourage everybody to like think about what it takes to do that. This is not something you can be like, yeah, I like leading people or whatever. Like it takes time, it takes money, it takes resources,
Building people up, seeing
reputation.
potential before they see it in themselves. I always say, good managers, if I were to like bring down to one thing, I'm like, they see potential in people before they see it in themselves. And they're willing to develop that
Yeah.
potential and systems to support that. Well,
Yeah.
this was
Yeah.
awesome. I'm like, we need 2 hours, but I know people on LinkedIn are busy. Thank you so much. It's going to be on my website. Connect with Susie. She's on my LinkedIn. She's doing some amazing work in leadership development. She is now a fractional consultant who works with awesome brands. And yeah, I can't wait to like collaborate, and always such a pleasure to kind of share what we're seeing in the space. Thank you so much for saying yes to being on the Bad Boss with Anya Soto.
All day long, Team Anya. So yeah, no,
Uh,
thanks for and nice to see you today. Have a great one and we'll talk
awesome.
soon.
Thank you so much.
All right. See you, Anya.
See you.